Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're continuing our work on the Child of Ether project. So, I've been thinking, I need to turn this project, turn it out quicker. I've made an observation when I was playing The Forest that, when I was playing The Forest, I made an observation between that and the Subnautica game. I made an observation that those games actually became available and were put up on Steam in a fairly early stage in their development. And the only reason why that was the case is because those games had creative component to them. I mean, The Forest had the cannibals and building, and Subnautica had its own enemies and building. So both of those games had an early creative component, and they seem to have done just fine. Now, obviously, the developers had been supporting the project over the years after the initial early access release. They have been updating it with additional content, and then eventually they added the story components into them. I distinctly remember, like way back, I think I was watching some video on YouTube, and I was watching somebody play The Forest in like a group. And within the forest, without like spoiling it too much, they reached a particular location, a location of interest. And then when they opened up the door, there was a message from the developers that said, "This part of the game hasn't been done yet. Thanks for supporting the project." So that particular discovery that they made, that location they've been going into, that was added later on. That was the narrative of the whole project, and was added way later on, after I think like several years of just developing the project. And then I made parallels between that and the development of Subnautica. In Subnautica, I was watching, like, I played Subnautica way later, like when Subnautica 2 basically came out. So that's the first time I played the first Subnautica game. And by that point, the whole game was finished. So I basically got the full experience that anybody will get now when they get the game. So what's interesting is that after playing the Subnautica, I went back to, just for the sake of curiosity, I watched Markiplier play Subnautica, and I realized that Markiplier played Subnautica when it came out in early access, like when it was really bare bone, back when the only thing it really had is just the creative survival component, and a lot of the resources props were actually just like cubes with textures of the resource on them, where there weren't actually like the real resources. So so that basically told me that between Subnautica and between The Forest, the developers of those two games have published kind of like a bare minimum. I wouldn't really even call it. Maybe it was a vertical slice, because the core mechanic of The Forest back at that point was survival and fighting off the cannibals, and the core mechanic of Subnautica was base building underwater, right? Survival underwater. So it wasn't until way later that they have actually added story components to the game. I'm thinking I might be able to do the same thing with this project, because this does have a survival creative component, more or less speaking, to it. And there is a massive story, but if I want to release this whole game all in one go, that's going to take me years. And that means it's going to take me years to get any sort of feedback on what kind of project this is and what people might be, like what components of the game are more appealing and less appealing. So that's what's going to happen if I wait a couple of years, while working on this project, with however much time I can afford to give it per week. So what I'm thinking is maybe give it a test and try to follow the footsteps of Subnautica and the Forest, and establish a set of survival tools, survival mechanics, for this world, for this game, and see if I can work with that, and then add the story components later on in the game. So my job right now would be to establish what is the set of mechanics that I need to put into here in order to call this like a minimum viable product, so to speak. So, right. So we got Child of Ether project here. What do we need for minimum viable product? Okay. Uh-oh. I think the plugin is rearranging my stuff. I don't want it to do that. I got this little Trello plugin that allows me to do some interesting things. Brackets, no, don't do that. Resize list, no. Sort cards, no. Okay, that should be good. Yeah, the little plugin adds additional styling and additional features and abilities to do like highlighted text and colored and subscript and superscript, all sorts of stuff. Okay, minimum viable product. Cool. So what do we got to do? First of all, so we're gonna say survival. Okay. What goes into survival? Growing crops, and this is kind of an important one because it ties into the story, which is ultimately what this whole project is supposed to revolve around. It is based around a mystery and a story, like most of my games are. So growing crops, which means when we grow crops, harvesting. Survival means defending crops from enemies, from creatures. Okay. Defending yourself from enemies. Okay. We can expand these into other categories, technically. I don't believe that the tool... Oh, actually, yeah, I can do multi-line here now. That's cool. Nice. Okay. I think that's because of the plugin. Oh man, this is really cool. Okay, so how do we do lists? Blue tags, strike through, line break, normal separators, large separators. I think that's for the tabs. Can we do a list? Add new list column. Remove Trello's add new list column. Create empty lists. Resize list to fit board. Yeah, we don't want sort lists. Okay. All right. Icon. Cool. All right, so defending from enemies. We'll expand this into a separate list afterwards. Okay, so defending from enemies. So we need to make sure that if you're doing things like foraging, the resources don't run out. Because if the resources run out, the only way for you to continue is to start a new game, and that sucks because all your progress is lost. So replenish world or respawn resources. Okay, so we can respawn the world resources. think that should be fine. What else? Defending yourself from enemies. We'll have to define what kind of enemies there are. Defending crops from creatures. Harvesting, growing crops. And, okay, this has to kind of tie into the different method of approaching crops than, let's say, what you usually are used to in a survival game. Like, you know, Stardew Valley and Minecraft. It's supposed to kind of have a twist to it based on the narrative, which of course isn't going to be present in the early access. So, what else? Growing crops, harvesting, defending crops from creatures. Okay, so let's say these are the 5 categories. Survival for the sake of survival, well, I mean, Minecraft does it well. Because, I mean, technically that game is just a one huge survival and exploration game. And it has been for many, many years before they've added the quote-unquote ending. So we need to add mystery, small narrative bits. Okay. Small narrative stories. Okay. So not the main narrative, not the main story, but something to captivate the attention of the player. Something to keep their interest that this is more than just a survival game. Even though, as I said, the very first version, the early access, would be pretty much just a survival game, but I'd like to toss in a little bit of mystery, a little bit of a story into it, so that it's basically what is a vertical slice of the game. It's basically just a segment of the game that very clearly communicates what the whole game is about. So if your game is, you know, Battlefield, then your vertical slice is one of the levels with, you know, 64, 128 players duking it out all together. So you'd want to include all the weapons, or at least the vast, a good roster of weapons. Maybe not all the weapons, but a good roster of weapons. If you want to have vehicles, you got to include some vehicles. If you want to have planes, you got to include some air combat. That's the vertical slice. So if I'm building a vertical slice here, it's basically has to include the aspects of the final game to represent what the final game is going to feel like, what's going to look like. So adding a bit of mystery and narrative would be a good way to go about it. Like, for example, there's a cave entrance in the middle of the forest, and you're like, wait, hold on, how do I enter here? Or maybe we can find a key to it inside of another, let's say one of the houses, right? The old mansion house. This one right here, which of course you can't really see. Yeah, there we go. So this house, put some narrative components there. I think that might be a good addition. I probably want to get a few more of these house designs. Good thing is that in the last video, we had set up these textures, so I can just reuse them to build the new house out of. Yeah, okay, cool. We gotta get some more enemies here. These guys are a little... They're gray, they're kind of creepy, but I want to have some invisible enemies, the ones you gotta listen for. I think we're gonna get rid of this stuff here, the chests. Okay, and then we've got some fences here. So when you break fences, you got to get some wood out of the fences. Yeah. So way back when I started this, I had this whole idea that the materials here aren't really made out of like materials, they're made out of gems. So when you break down a tree, you get a whole bunch of gems out of it instead of getting wood. And it also tied into the explanation. Like there's actually a narrative explanation of why that is the case. But I'm wondering if maybe that's a little bit being different for the sake of being different, rather than for the sake of making an interesting effect to it. So I figure maybe it would be a good idea to make it so that trees actually drop a little bit of wood. Also, the terrain had cleared the navigation mesh, so the enemies can't traverse it anymore. Which means we actually need to do combat system. So we've been experimenting with a combat system where we use the mouse to kind of swipe through a couple of nodes, a couple of dots. I don't know if that is a great way to go about it. Okay. There's this dude kind of flying towards us. So we get close. Kind of swipe through the nodes and then defeat it like this. I don't know if that's a good way to go about it, to be honest. Because then it's your wrist doing all the work. It's not really... Yeah. It's not the most intuitive way to handle it. It was an experiment, so at least that's fine. The whole idea behind the dots was that it was borrowed from one of those music-based tablet games where the music's playing and you gotta tap on the a bunch of buttons, a bunch of no, go away. A bunch of buttons and a bunch of sliders to keep up with the rhythm. So, tablet music game. Nope. Nope. We're gonna see some sketchy. Tablet. Drawing tablet music game. Really? For any FPS. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. Okay, well, could you... No. Oh. No! No advertisement on my channel. Go away. Okay. Give me 1 sec. Oh my god, double ads? I swear to god. Okay, so anyways, let's see. Right, so this is... Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, this is the idea. So there's like sliders and buttons, and you use your tablet in order to keep up with the rhythm. Let's see. Jeez, all the damn ads. Okay, show us the game. There you go. So I figured, okay, so there's skill involved in something like this. Maybe we can add something like this to this project. The problem I found is that it's just utter hell on the wrist. It's just utter hell on the wrist. So I don't think that's going to be a great way to handle it, but I still want to see if there's perhaps something we can do to make it skill-based. So what if we try something like Typing of the Dead, where key prompts pop up and you gotta like click, 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 click. Go away, Google. So it's like a prompt pops up above the character and you gotta click, 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 click in order to make it like you tap in the rhythm. So it's like on, off, on, off, and then it's like left, left, right, left, left, right. When you click with the mouse button. So instead of I mean, the alternative is to just do what Diablo does, and it's completely out of your control. It's just based on your character stats. But then we have to go too far into actual character stats rather than player skill. So that kind of makes me think, just for the sake of experimentation, maybe we can try it. Okay. Let's try it. Why don't we try that, eh? So, we're gonna say combat system rhythm-based. Okay. We'll see how that works. I mean, we tried already one system. It didn't really work very well. No big deal. We'll see something else. What else do we need for minimal viable product? Random events. Random mystery events. Okay. We could have a traveling like trader come in once every like what, Wednesday? Small portable one. So it's not going to be the big truck at the, you know, on this side of the house. This is going to be kind of a location you find. So it's probably not going to be present right from the get-go. Traveling merchant. Okay. We're going to start removing this stuff because it is underdeveloped. We have some flowers here. We don't need this character. This character is not developed. This character is also for testing. We remove the chests. We could just select them here. Okay. The direction cube, that was just a little experiment. Come on, let me select it. Thank you. Direction cube was a piece of code that allows us to calculate angle and direction so we can orient the sprite correctly. Cool beans. What's next? You know, I wonder. So right now, if I click on, let's say here, it selects the tree. So what if I go inside and I hide both collision shapes? Are they still going to be visible? Well, it still selects the tree, but what if I then go into the tree and lock it? Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. Okay. So this actually helps me quite a bit. We can still select them like this, and we can't move them, but hey, we can always unlock them here. But hey, at least now I can kind of click through here and select the, let's say, this fence, or that one right there. Cool. Okay, so locking the nodes is going to be very, very quite helpful. We need to establish there's some sort of a territory edge. I think we have a pretty large working area, and I think this is just going to be one of several islands like this. We're gonna handle it like Stalker does, where there's it's technically an open world game, but the world is segmented in chunks. That you go through a loading screen. So I think that will be just fine. Next, what's next? We might as well take the terrain, or take this sucker here. If we bake the navigation mesh, it's not gonna bake anything. Yeah, like bake that little thing right there. That's because we still need that static object. So we're gonna create a mesh. It is gonna be, well, fairly low in resolution. There we go. Now where did they put it? It puts it right here. Okay. So it's relatively accurate, more or less. So if I disable the terrain, yeah, it's relatively accurate. I should be able to apply a testing material to it. Pattern UV. Uh-huh. Okay, this pattern UV is looking mighty interesting. Triplanar. Oh, interesting. I guess the mesh that is generated by the terrain tool doesn't have proper UVs. That is fascinating. Okay. Unshaded, transparent. Okay, I guess we can't really use this here. Since this mesh, yep, no UV data, which makes sense. I mean, the purpose of it isn't to have UV. So I'm going to tell the navigation node to bake the mesh maps. Hopefully it won't crash because I didn't save it. Okay, so what do we have here? We have a whole bunch of islands. That's not good. We need to adjust this. So watershed method is fine. I think the agent's max climb has to be a little bit higher. Again, I didn't save. Save it. Okay, now. Cool. So what do we have here? It is excluding the trees. It's also hovering a little bit too much. Let's see if we can bring it closer down to the ground. Okay, cool. Right. So if we want to be able to do harvesting, or if we want to be able to do like planting and harvesting, we gotta make sure that the whole thing is actually, the terrain is capable of being cleared or prepared for crops. Right now, all this grass is, as cool as it looks, all this grass is basically static. I'm sure people would like to be able to do something about that. Let's remove the detail layers for the time being. Okay, there we go. We do have grass as an object. We might be able to place it. Let's do a spatial node. Actually, no, there is a special type of node we can use called the scatter. Scatter 3D. We're going to call it grass. We're going to add, what do we have? Foliage. Grass. Here we go. So the problem here, as you can see, is that if you don't move the mouse far enough, it is going to end up placing multiple pieces of grass in one same location. That's a bit of a problem. Because it's possible to basically get that grass to, well, to place basically 2 pieces of grass all in one go. Does this game come with a dark mode? Well, you know, it comes with a prescription. I mean, to be fair, this is kind of what, whoops, if I disable the placeholder mesh, right here, and then enable the terrain. This is kind of the general look of it. So if I just, there we go, more or less. We do have like a daytime, which is a little bit brighter. It's always the extreme. It's either like super dark, you can't see anything, or it's super bright and it's just burning eyes. Let's see, ambient light. There we go. Also got the fog. So we gotta adjust the fog and the background at the same time. Otherwise, it's a little crunchy. Cool. All right. So now the grass is an actual object. As you can see, we got plenty of places where the grass has been placed twice. That's not good. Let me double check something. Has the plugin been updated? Let's see. Plugins. Scatter tool 1.0.1. So if we go here, scatter tool 1.0.1. No, it hasn't. But I remember bringing this issue. Yeah, I remember bringing this issue up with the developer of the plugin, and I think there was an improvement. Go away, Google. Okay, so 3D scene scatter. Okay, what version is this? The last update was in 2021. There we go. This was my bug submission. Was it fixed? Should no longer be spammed if you don't move the mouse. Okay, so I think what we need to do is just download this plugin again. So download zip. Zippity zip. Okay. Whoops. We're going to open it up. And I need to get into the add-ons. Okay, scatter. So, add-ons. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to delete this. Plug this in here. Cool. Unload, unload. So it's 1.1 dev now. I'm going to, just for good measure, close and reopen it. And child of ether. Okay. Cool. Okay, let's see. There's the grass. I don't see any additional properties. Object margin. Hold on. I think that's what we need. Oh, Hello? Hello? Well, I think we broke it. I think what might be happening is that... Ooh, what the... let's see. Let me get rid of all these. Anything in the debugger? No? Okay. So I think the... Oh, okay. Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, yeah. So that's a bug. I think it's just using my camera. It's just using my camera now to place the grass. But the margin. Does the margin work? The margin does work. Okay, this is fascinating. The camera... Okay. I'm going to launch OBS, do a quick capture of this little issue, and then send it off as a bug report. And then for the time being, we just work with a couple of placed grass pieces, just so we can program them. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at this. All right, this is a quick little test. So we got the scatter tool. We select the grass. When I paint, you see that it's being painted all the way over here. But if I right click, it does remove them correctly. If I set the margin to 2, it does work. The margin works, but the placement is still incorrect. And right clicking, of course, removes them from the right coordinate. Okay, perfect. I am going to... Oh yeah, dude, Godot is just amazing. Like, I have stopped looking for any other engines. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Cool. Right, so, I don't really... I guess we can't really use this plugin for the time being. Unless, hold on, maybe it's the problem with the coordinates? No? No. I guess not. We could dive into the script of the plugin and see if we can fix it, but I don't want to. So we're gonna change scene. Just a spatial. We're gonna... Oh, okay. I guess we can't. All right, that's fine. It is a plugin technically. So we're just gonna call this grass. And I'm just gonna place like a couple of pieces of grass here for us to work with. Objects. We might want to organize this. So let's do new folder, foliage. Foliage. We have flower, grass, tree, berry bush. Pop that into foliage. Couldn't save dependencies. Ooh, scary. Let me just double check that. So save and then open up levels. Yeah, this is why moving stuff is kind of a dangerous thing to do. Oh, all these things came back. That's the grass. Hold on, is it gonna work now? Nope. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I've left feedback on the plugin. So we're gonna go into foliage, set up grass, cool beans. I just need something to do some tests. Mainly just cutting down the grass, collecting it. Yeah, to be honest, I like this grass more when it just faces the camera. Kind of wish the foliage scatter plugin did that as well. It has to be added in the shader though. Okay, well, I'm not entirely sure why we have to chop down the whole thing. Also, this is a quite menacing soundtrack for something that's supposed to be mainly daylight. Okay. So we need to be able to collect grass. Need to be able to collect grass. That's gonna act as fuel. Maybe you can combine grass and torch, and well, now you have a torch that's gonna last for a little while. Cool. How do we chop down trees? I believe the player is the one that handles that. Let's see. Screenshot process, inventory process, interface, camera process, footstep mining. Okay, so we have the mining function here. Our own little custom function. What does it do? Close mineable. Okay, so close mineable determines which object we're going to be mining right now. Which object we're going to be mining right now. That has to now take into account the grass. But here's the thing. Right now, close mineable is based on the proximity to the player, not really where you're pointing. So I'm wondering if I should try to change that. Doing it based on proximity to the player is very easy. Which kind of makes me wonder. There could be grass stuck inside of the tree, so if you're trying to chop down some trees, or if you're trying to pick up some grass, it'll target the trees because the tree is the first one to have collisions. Okay. We have a tool animation. We have the mouse sprite visibility. We have the tool visibility. Here we check if the name of the mineable is either tree. If the tree is in the name. Yeah, we're probably going to have to change this up a little bit. If we want to have a lot of mineable objects, we might want to switch to a group-based system rather than name-based system. Right now I'm just checking if the word tree is found in the name of the closest mineable. It could work, but you have to then worry about names. Like if you have a object called tree, and then you have another object called rotten tree, maybe rotten trees are just props, but they do have the word tree in them, so, right? Rotten trees are just set pieces. So this code will attempt to mine a rotten tree, and it's going to crash because the rotten tree doesn't have all the same properties and variables that a regular tree does. Can't be mined. Okay, so how do we go about this? Instead of checking for the presence of the X, we could... I mean, we could borrow ideas from Minecraft where you can just punch trees. Of course, it's going to be not efficient, but it still means that if you find yourself without a tool, you're not completely shit out of luck, sort of thing, right? So you can still make something happen. We could make small trees, like from the forest. So even if you don't have a tool, if you like get killed and you lose your hatchet, you can very easily find a rock and you can very easily find a stick and you can put the two and two together. Of course, it also takes cloth, and cloth is very precious in the game. Um, Finding it is kind of a pain in the butt. And then you can just build your axe. Hmm. I believe our axe even looks like a makeshift axe. If we go to sprites, UI, item icons, yeah. Yeah, well, more or less. It does actually look like it's made out of metal. What do you guys think? What do you think? Should we do punchable trees or should we do um, easy to access resources to make a quick tool? Another thing we have is the when you chop down, let's say, a tree, or when you use the axe on the tree, it drops a bunch of orbs or a bunch of these gems. And then you have to jump on one or contact one in order to pick it up. So this is another thing. Maybe it's a good idea to click on an orb to pick it up. But then again, we have a problem with collision shapes where a particular collision shape would block, like you can see the orb or the gem behind it, but the collision shape would be invisible, but it blocks it. So if we use the mouse clicking to pick it up, that means people might get frustrated when they can clearly see the gem or they're clicking on the gem, but what they don't see is that the ray that is shooting from the camera onto the object is hitting the tree before it hits the gem. Hmm. Which, I mean, there's workarounds to it. We can make the ray ignore the tree, but then we can't use the ray to mine the tree, right? That's the thing. Decisions. We have a mining progress here. Hmm. I'm just thinking, how can I revamp this system so it would be more flexible? I don't think it will want to stick to name checking. Hmm. We could have the objects like tree, grass, bush, display a little dot in front of them when we walk up to one, and then you have to use the mouse. Like the mouse has to be near the dot in order to determine what it is you're trying to do with it. It's another way we can handle this. And that could work. It would still use the proximity to the player to do it. Okay, let me try something. So if I want to very clearly communicate to the player what it is that the player is near, the player is about to interact with, what if I add a little label? So we're going to get rid of this, get rid of that, hide this. Item held, that's cool. We have FPS. I think I'm just going to borrow this. So this is item near item name. Okay. We'll make it pretty after the fact. So when we do mining, if the close mineable is not equals to null, we're going to talk to the near item, near item name, and then we're going to talk to its BB code text. We need to make sure that it's actually enabled. There we go. And then we are going to set it to a string of center so that it's whatever text we put in here is centered. And we're going to get close mineable dot name. Tree 2. Okay. Cool. Don't know if it's great, but okay. Canvas layer near item name. We'll set the rect position to be equals to get viewport, and then within the viewport get mouse position. So we're going to set it to the position of the mouse, which means the label will always be near the mouse. Like this. Now, we want to make sure that it gets cleared with just an empty string. And only if there is something in the near close mineable, only then we can see the name. And maybe we don't center it either. Maybe having it to the side is a good way to go about it. Perhaps. Let's see. Okay, so almost. We just need to... We need to add vector 2 of, let's do 32, 0. So just offset it a little bit to the side. Okay. And there it is. So when we get to the bush, it does actually say berry bush. Tree, and then when we're not near it, it doesn't do anything. Now, what if we have two trees near each other? Let's see. So, can't select this tree. Okay. I see how it is. Just gonna unlock it. There we go. So tree 2, tree 14. So I think it's already distance-based. I believe when we programmed this way, way back, the closest mineable is already distance-based. So here we set it to null. I don't think we are. I don't think... Yeah, okay, so I don't think that's what we do. It's kind of an old system. We'd have to update it. Let's see. On area, body entered. So first of all, the fact that it's just called area is already kind of a red flag. Combat area. Oh, geez. Okay, interactables area. Camera area. Okay, so it is called on area body entered. So as you can see, that is the node we're connecting this to, and it is checking for mineable. So it's doing a loop. It's looping through an array of the word tree and berry bush, and it's checking if that one of these names is in the name, and if it is, the closest mineable becomes whatever has just entered. This is not good, because just because an object has entered the player doesn't mean it is now the closest object to the player. We could be near 6 objects, and the last object to enter may not be the closest object to the player. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to change this up a little bit. So we have close mineable, and then var mineable array. And this is just, again, I've programmed this a long, long time ago, and I've had a lot of things to learn since then. And now I get the opportunity to kind of update the code. So here's what I'm going to do. When a body enters, we're going to check if this object is mineable. Okay. This is where I'm going to make use of groups more than checking for the name, so for the keywords to be in the name. I think that is just a better way to handle it. So I'm going to go into the foliage. I'm going to go into the tree, and we're going to add it to a group called mineable group. If I can spell it right. Mineable group. Okay. I'm also going to go into the berry bush and add it to a group of mineable group, and go into the grass, add it to the group of mineable group. Okay. Now, popping back into the player, we're going to check if the body, so this body that's provided to us by the area node when something enters that area, body is in group mineable group. So if the body is in the group called mineable group, then it is a mineable object. We are going to add it to the list of all the mineable things that are near us. That's mineable array. Okay, so we're going to do mineable array dot append. We're going to append the body. So the body will be any object that is in the group of mineable group. Okay, now it says mineable array is not declared because I misspelled it. How did I misspell it? Oh, mining. Mineable array. Okay. Cool. So here's the only thing. Just for good measure, we're going to check if this mineable array might not have this object already inside the array, because we don't want to accidentally add the same object twice. So we're gonna check with an if statement if this array does not, the exclamation mark inverts the check, so it does not have this body in it. And if it doesn't have it in it, the array will have the body be added to it. So array is just a fancy word for a list. Cool. And then we don't need any of this nonsense because this is just cringe fest. Cool. So now we have this object in the array. Okay, what happens when something leaves the array? Or something leaves the player? Well, we have to remove it from the array. So we're going to say if whatever's left, whatever has just left the area is a mineable in the group called mineable group, and if it is in the group, we're going to erase it from the array. So if that body that just left is in the group called mineable group, and it's present already in the list of all the nearby minables, we're going to erase it from it. And that's basically it. And get rid of this cringe fest as well. Okay, so now this gives us an up-to-date list of everything that's near us that can be mined, be it a tree, a rock, bush, or whatever. Cool. The only thing now that we need to do is we need to figure out which one is the closest one. So we are going to... I really want to put it in mining, but this is like... This could be also used for interacting with objects. And I'm wondering if I should just make sure that this is like flexible enough to be reused. Technically, we mine with the left mouse button. We interact with the E button. So I think that that's one way we can separate it. Okay, that's fine. So I think we can go into mining in this case. That should be fine. All right, so we're gonna first figure out which mineable object is the closest. So this should be a fairly simple task to do. We make a variable called closest distance. We make it to some sort of an obscenely large number. Next, close mineable. I want to rename it to closest mineable, to be honest. Again, just force a habit. We're gonna take close mineable. Let's just kind of cycle through it, make sure these are all variables. Seems like it. Yes, okay. So we're gonna call it closest mineable. I don't know, just a preference. Okay. Will be reset to null. Then we're gonna loop through each item in the mineable array. This can be called whatever you want. You can call this monkey butts if you want. But this is the array that contains all the mineable objects, and we're looping through it. So we're looping one item at a time. So first of all, we have to calculate distance to mineable. So var dist to item. We're going to start with our global position of the player, and then calculate the distance to the global position of the mineable. Now, apparently, I am told that as of Godot 3.5, there's a new property called global position in 3D. Usually, you'd have to use global transform.origin. So let's see. Global position. It didn't pop up with a suggestion. Node 2D, global position, or just position? Did they not add it to the documentation? All right, I guess not. Let's just global transform.origin. So that's the global position equivalent for 3D. And we're going to do dot distance to. We're going to take this item and get its global transform.origin. This is going to give us the distance. Now, we're going to check if closest distance is, well, if the distance that we have calculated happens to be less than this distance. Because if it's less, then it is closer. And then that means the closest distance has to be updated. It's no longer 1,000. It is now whatever distance this is. And this also means the closest mineable object is whichever object that has surpassed this distance. Now, because this is in the for loop, this will repeat over and over and over and over again for however many objects there are in this array. And that's constantly being updated by the area node. So all the time, we're going to have an up-to-date variable called closest mineable, and it will always contain the up-to-date name of the closest object that we can mine. Now, technically that's it. We should now be able to see the trees swap between each other. Okay, there's the berry bush. Tree 14, tree 14. So you can see like a small pixel change changes which tree is closest. So it's keeping it up to date. Okay. Now, while this works, I am thinking if perhaps we can do something to indicate to the player which one of these trees is the tree. So maybe the name isn't that reliable. Is what I'm thinking. We definitely need a daytime soundtrack. Do we not have a daytime soundtrack? Music. Unknown outside. Technically this is it. Okay, let's set this to be the soundtrack for the outside. Technically, it is supposed to be playing during daytime. Okay, so auto load. We have our audio master handling all the music. It looks like it's already here. Unknown outside. Okay. Where do we trigger this from, though? If I'm correct, I think we have a trigger zone. We've set up a trigger zone for... Oh, I think I see it. No, I don't. Yeah, right there. There's the... Oh. It's definitely here. Let's see. Where is it? Music change. Where's this located? That's located right there. Dark nothing. There's another one right here. Music change trigger. That's the one. Okay, so we're going to say you are supposed to play this one. Unknown outside. Okay, so the task right now is to communicate which one of these two trees the player is going to be chopping. Okay. So what I'm thinking is placing a little dot on the object that is currently targeted, that is in question. Let's see. So, this is probably going to be done in the player user interface, because technically you can only target one object at a time. So that might be like a good place for us to handle this in. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to do, but I need to restart the episode, so give me 1 second. And we're back. Cool. New recording, new file. You know, if something happens, I don't want it to be corrupted. Even though I do have 3 backups going for this recording. Cool. All right. So we are going to make the a dot appear in front of the object, which we are going to mine. So to do that, I can add texture rect. We technically already have a dot sprite we can use. So this is interact dot. Let's quick load. Cam pivot dot. Maybe. Yeah, it's nice and small. I think we might be able to work with it. How big is it? It is 128 by 128. That is a big dot. Oh yeah, that is huge. Okay, let's set it to 32 by 32. Can't do that. Gotta make sure that it expands. Cool. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I need to unproject the 3-dimensional position of the interactable object back to 2-dimensional position on the screen. So basically I need to determine where is this object on the screen, and then position the dot right there. Now thankfully this already kind of handles, now that's item process, excuse me, mining. Thankfully this already handles the determination of which object is the closest one, and we know that it is going to be null if there is nothing close to us. So we are going to say that the interact dot visible will be false. We can make it a ternary operator. We can say it's true if closest mineable is not equals to null, else it's going to be false. So it will toggle between true and false based on whether or not this is not null, based on this condition. Cool. Now, if it is not null, we do want to reposition it. And I'm going to like put it right here because I don't want it to run unless there is something mineable nearby. So we're going to do... We need to figure out where on the screen this mineable object is located. So that is easily done. We take the camera, our own camera right there. We run a command on it called unproject position, and it's asking to give it the position of the object in the world. So we can do closest mineable dot global transform dot origin. Okay. So this should now position a dot. Yep, right there. That right there is technically the point of origin for that object. Now, I would like to lift it up, so we're going to do plus vector 2. Don't move it on the x-axis, but add 64 pixels on the y-axis. Oh, okay, maybe not add. Maybe we want to subtract to lift it up. Hey, okay, cool. So you can see it's always keeping track of where this whole thing is. Which means we don't need the item name. We'll just kind of get rid of it. just cluttering up the view. Cool. We could also make, instead of playing with visibility, we could make it scale in and out. So let's try that. How do we make it scale? Well, we're gonna get rid of this. We're gonna talk to rect scale. And we're gonna use a smooth transitioning formula, so it goes a little something like this. The vector 2 scale, so x scale and y scale, have to be different based on if there is a close mindable or if there isn't one. So we are going to do this. It's going to be scaling to 0.0 if closest mindable is null, else it's going to be scaling to a vector 2 of 1, 1. So the regular normal scale. Then we have to subtract from the scale, the current scale, and divide it by, say, 10. And that's it. That's the smooth transitioning formula. Technically, you could say, to make it easy to see, this could be like the vector 2 of 0, 0. So if you wanted to smoothly scale to 0, this is what the formula looks like. And it's always plus equals. It doesn't matter if you're scaling up or down. Okay, so cool. Now this will work if you walk up or leave the tree, but it doesn't work if you change trees. Well, it doesn't work either way, so it doesn't matter. The visibility. Let's see. Did we? Yes, we did toggle the visibility. It used to be toggled by code. Now it has to be toggled manually. There you go. Okay, so you can see it doesn't work. Why does it not work? Interact dot plus equals. It is going to be 0.0 if closest mindable is null. Oh, right. This condition, this ternary operator, has to be wrapped into its own set of brackets, because then it thinks that the subtraction has to take place first, and there's a weird comparison happening. There we go. Not bad. Now you can see that it's when it scales down, it scales to this weird point in the top left corner. And the reason why that's happening is because technically the top left corner of this little dot is the origin of the scale. So that's why when it scales, it looks like it's moving. So what we can do, however, is we can set the pivot offset, I think 16 by 16. Okay, and now when we scale it, it scales across the middle, more or less. Like we can probably just fine-tune it a little bit. Bam. What I find really weird is that even though this is pivot offset, as far as I know, rotation... Oh, no, rotation actually does affect it. Cool. All right, never mind. It's the position that doesn't affect it. So if I set it to 0, you can see 0 is still this very left edge. It's a little bit strange, but okay, whatever. I'll take it. Okay, so now it should be scaling okay into a nice small dot. Although I think that that might have to be a little bit larger. There we go. Okay. You can also see that the position doesn't get maintained. The position does get maintained, which kind of makes sense because the position is based on the closest mindable. So when the closest mindable becomes nothing, then there's no position to update it from, which is interesting. Let's make it a little bit faster. The transition here a little bit faster. And we might want to increase the dot size. Maybe. Let's see. So if I do 64 by 64, which means pivot offset has to be 32 by 32, roughly speaking. Would have to kind of adjust it because the dot itself is not perfectly in the center. Cool. That is a one sketchy username there, buddy. Okay. Okay, so it's doing something. Hmm. Okay, so first of all, here's what we can update. When we walk up to this tree, this branch, you can see the scaling does work, right? So when we walk away, it scales in. When we will move back in, it scales up. Now, what doesn't work is when you switch between the two trees, it just kind of repositions itself. And it doesn't scale, right, with the next tree. So we can technically fix that by detecting if there has been a change. What's the huge code happening here? Oh, it's, it's not really that big. It's just average. But the size doesn't matter. It's the motion of the barge or whatever. Anyways, close mineable old. So we make a variable called close mineable old, and this variable will allow us to compare if the closest mineable has changed. Right, so if we kind of trail back to where we're using it, which is right here. Okay, so this will allow us to check if the closest mineable has changed. So we're going to do if closest mineable old is not the same as closest mineable, then closest mineable old, of course, has to be updated, so it only happens once. But now, inside of this if statement, we can do whatever it is we want to do to make it scale. So like, for example, setting the scale to vector 2 of 0, 0 again. So now when we switch between trees, the scale should be reset. There we go. You can see that it's not quite in the middle. But it's okay. This is actually something I wanted to address. The fact that the trees aren't in the middle. Okay. So we have tree 1. I believe we've done something close to this already. We've had like a dictionary of offsets. Or did we? We got tree, wobble time, scale. We got sounds. Texture. Here we go. So maybe we haven't done this. Hold on. Let's go find one of these wide trees and check their rotation. I see they're rotating across the center. Their dot, however, isn't quite in the middle, which tells me that they're not really properly centered. Okay, so where do we get the data from? Do we even offset the tree? Offset, yeah. Okay. And yet, I don't see the offset. Yeah, I don't see the offset being used anywhere here. So I guess we don't. That's fascinating. You have tree mind. This is how we... Oh. This should not be working. We moved the tree. Yeah, this should not be functioning right now. We moved the tree to a different location. Tree, shadow, tree. Okay. How is this working? Oh no, never mind. Okay, the sprites are still in the same location. That's why it didn't crash. Which we probably should. This is starting to look like a mess. Hmm. So sprites, trees. Yeah. So there's a type of a tree, and there's a number of the tree. Type of the tree, number of the tree. So we were trying to align these trees from within the the image files in Krita, which is fine, but it doesn't quite still line up. How did we make it so that it rotates around the center? Or did we even do that? Again, this is kind of us grave digging some pretty ancient code. Like, this looks pretty decent. How did we achieve that? It's got to be something to do with position. Position? Offset? No. We got scale, physics process, rotation, modulate. We set the scale, set the texture. What's in the master node tree types? Tree types, just the names of the trees we have. Makes sense. We don't want each tree storing that information. We set the type, set the scale, set the texture, and we set the flip. Interesting. We set the rotation for the wobble. That's basically it. Like, there's nothing else here that adjusts the offset to keep the tree centered. Okay, let me try this. So I'm gonna take a look here. If I reset the offset, what's gonna happen? Oh yeah, that's gonna happen. So the trees are just kind of all over the place. Okay. And the position is still exactly the way it is. We technically do also have a problem with the what? With the flipping. Oh, yeah. So when it's flipped, its center is also messed up. Okay, so if we adjust this, okay, this needs like a much faster slider. Negative 400. So that right there is the tree offset, but as soon as we do flip horizontal, it becomes misaligned. So that kind of makes sense. Okay, so I think we're going to do this. We have the types of trees. That's cool. We have the types of trees. We need to build like a database of types of trees, their offsets, and their offsets when they're flipped. If that makes sense. And the reason why we had this whole setup is so that we could create a very easy piece of code for setting the types of trees in a particular biome. So the code automatically sets the tree types for us. We don't have to go through each and every tree painstakingly setting its type. So here's what we need. We're going to go into the script, maybe in the master node. Okay, we have tree types. We have the types of drops these trees produce. Item database, stackable maximums. Now we'll have my vengeance. Sounds, quest data, item database. Cool. Okay, so let's do var tree offsets. So we have already like 3 tree PNG files here, and yet we have this one as well. Let's see, if I were to say remove this, is this going to be okay? Let's add a folder. Move to sprites, trees, old. Let's move it there. Because I know I re-exported the code. Well, it's working, so that's fine. Okay, cool. Let's see. So we've got master node, and we've got this tree. Okay, what tree is this? This is tree 001. That is not good. We need to work with actual tree names. Okay. Oh. Well, this is already centered. 1500 by 1500. Maybe that's why. Let's do 1500 divided by 2. 720. So maybe we're going to do negative. Okay, so that kind of keeps it centered. So I guess the reason why I didn't have any offsets is because the sprites are already centered. I just had to do that. Just place them in the ground. Oak, that seems centered. Oh yeah, okay, so we've done this already. Pine. So if it's not centered in the image. Spruce. And I did adjust this, so maybe now it's actually going to be centered. Let's take a look. It's not really centered. But I also think that that particular tree might be offset. Not really. So the point of origin of the tree itself is right in that little nubbin right there. And yet the dot appears right here. Oh, I know why. It's because the dot is offset. It's not the tree's fault, it's the dot's fault. Again, because the position takes place across this point right here, not this point here. So we know that the size is 64 by 64. So all I have to do is when we set the position, we subtract. I'm only to subtract 64. Right, so vector 2 of subtract 32 by 32. That's why. That's the reason why it doesn't line up. There we go. That's in the middle there. That's in the middle there. That's in the middle there. Okay. I think that could work. Okay, so I think we can make it so that the dot doesn't appear unless you have the correct tool selected. Let's see. You can see that when we walk away, the dot just kind of ceases to exist. Okay. That's fine. So, we don't want the dot to appear unless we have the correct tool selected. So for trees, it would be chopping. It would be the axe with which we chop. For the stones, it would be a pickaxe. Okay. So we can technically work with the item name from the inventory. We just don't want to do the rest of this. And we want to make sure that it's modular. So the type of item, you have to select the type of item, the correct tool to be able to mine this particular resource type. So if we do tree will use an axe. Berry bush, I guess we just use hands or whatever. Maybe we just don't even mind the berry bush. Maybe we just press E to interact with it. It seems like an easy enough thing to do. Right. And then we got grass. Grass could probably be chopped down using a sickle. At the same time, it's like, do we need to go that deep into it? Maybe. Okay, so how do we now specify what tool each one of these things uses? We could use node groups again. So we could do tool, let's see, tool axe, for example. And this would allow us to check if whatever tool we've selected, it has the word tool axe in it. That's one way to do it. We do have to consider the fact that the grass and the trees both have a script of their own that they run. So we could place this as an export variable inside of the object. They have to run code anyways. So let's try var tool needed equals well, this is grass, so how do you spell sickle? Not cycle. Everything wants to know my location. Sickle tool. How do you spell this? Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's how we spell it. So we're going to say sickle. We don't have an item for it yet. So we're going to have to see about creating something. There's apparently a band called Crowbar. Interesting. A bunch of Gordon Freeman looking dudes in it too. Okay, so sickle tree is going to be using. The tool needed for the tree would be axe. Okay. So this makes it a little bit simpler because we can just talk to this variable directly rather than talking to a list of groups and then figuring out if any one of those groups fits the description. So we just have to make sure that anything that is mineable has a script attached to it. Cool. So here's what we do next. Before we do this, we're going to say check if player is holding the right tool for this mineable. So we're going to do if closest mineable tool needed happens to match selected item name and then this has to be lowercase. String to lower. So we'll do dot to lower. Okay. This will convert the name of the item to lowercase. Where does selected item name get its value? Selected item name is equal to an empty string. And if the inventory hotbar has the selected hotbar item, the name is populated. Cool. All right. That works out. All right. Fantastic. So this should be good. This also kind of makes me realize that the scale has to kind of change as well. So I think maybe in this case we are not going to be doing a ternary operator because we have to reset the value here. Let's see. Interaction dot, we'll need a variable for this. Mineable array var interact dot scale. Okay, there we go. So we get back down to the scale. We are going to say that it is going to be by default set to vector200. And here, if the name of the selected item in the hotbar matches, it's going to be set to 1, 1, which means that this piece of code can just kind of technically sit right here before we set it to 0, 0. So realistically, what's going to happen is that it's going to run the smooth transitioning code, and it has to be transitioning to the contents of this variable now. Then it's going to reset it, but it's already scaled it, so it doesn't matter where we reset it, because then right after that, it's going to check, hey, is there a close mineable, and are you holding the same tool as the mineable requires? If that's the case, the scale will be overwritten from this to this, and then next time around the code goes back to run this code, this will have been set to this. Now, if we have the other case where we are not near a mineable, so it's going to scale, then it's going to reset to 0. None of this will work because we're not near a mineable. So next time the code finishes, it goes back around from the top. It'll run the scaling tool, and now this time around, this value is set to 0, 0. So it's going to scale back down to 0. So it's just keeping in mind the code order execution. can help you create these flexible maneuvers. Okay, so this is fine. Right, check if the player's holding the right tool for this mineable object. Okay, so this means we don't need to do this anymore, because if we are holding the right tool for the mineable object, that's right, we can just tab this in. Attempt to mine. Okay. Left button's pressed. Mining progress. All right, well, let's see where it crashes. Okay, so right away, invalidate index tool needed. All right, because the bush doesn't have the variable. Well, at least it tells us right away. Tool needed. Do we need a tool for this? The forest has an interesting approach to it. In the forest, if you walk up to a berry bush and interact with it, you just consume the berry right away. But if you're holding a berry pouch, a craftable item, berry pouch, then instead of consuming it right away, it puts it in the pouch. And you can carry up to 30 berries. So this makes me wonder if this could be done in the same way. This also extends to the whole concept of me making sure that the same system that determines the closest mineable can also be reused for interacting with closest objects, like doors, levers, switches, characters. The same system that determines what is the closest mineable is also the system that determines what is the closest NPC, door, lever, switch, interactable component of any kind. So, if we want to future-proof this, and not have to do the same exact code for interactables, which runs the risk of us being able to interact with two objects at the same time, one being a mineable, one being an interactable, what I might want to do then, I might want to add the tree, bush, and grass into another group called interactable. Okay. So now that they're in the interactable group, I'm going to change mineable group for interactable group. And mineable array might have to change as well. Interactable array. Now, an interactable object could be mineable, but like with the berry bush, it could also not be mineable. So with the berry bush, you just walk up to it and press a button and it just grabs the berries off of it. So this is the strategy we're going to go with. Interactable array. Next. Closest mineable will be closest interactable. Okay. Closest interactable old becomes closest, or closest mineable old becomes closest interactable old. And I think that solves this problem. Okay, so the bush is not going to be in the mineable group. It is just in the interactable group. So we can still interact with it. And now we go back to this mining. Let's rename this function as well. This is no longer just for mining. Let's call it interacting process. And of course, we need to update this here as well. Okay. In the interacting process, we determine closest interactable. Okay. So when the closest interactable is not equals to null, the first thing we can do is determine if this object is mineable. So we know that because a mineable object would not only be in the group called interactable group, but it's also going to be in mineable group. So we're going to copy that name. We're going to do if closest interactable dot is in group called mineable group. If it is, we then proceed to do this stuff. Like, for example, checking if this mineable object, if we have equipped the correct tool to deal with this mineable object. And if we have, yeah, I think so. If we have, it makes the dot scale up. So the dot scale still handled outside of this whole nonsense. And then the left mouse button is going to be handling the mining operation. Okay, let's see. So right now, we don't see the dot. Okay, cool. Now if we don't select the tool, no dots appear, so we can't interact with this tree unless we select the proper tool. Okay. Now with this dude, we are supposed to be able to interact with the berry bush regardless. Regardless if we have the correct tool selected. So we can say else this object or this closest mineable is not, or this closest interactable, whoops, is not mineable. Okay, if it's not mineable, then we need to simply do this. Yeah, set the scale of the dot and position it anyway. Okay. As you can see, no tools required for this. But with these guys, a tool is needed. Okay. Nice. I honestly might want to switch my inventory for the tab button because it's too much of a travel for inventory. And then journal, which is technically right now set to, oh, journal is J. Okay, cool. Cool. All right. Cool beans. Inventory, cool. And then J for journal. Nice. Why don't we now make it possible for us to collect the berries? Okay. How do we collect the berries? It would be nice if we still got that round, the round loading bar, which, by the way, Godot has a built-in node for making those loading bars, so I didn't have to make one in flippin' whatever, Krita or Blender or whatever I used. Tool animate. Okay, how do we collect berries? Just press and collect, or hold down just for a very, very quick loading thing? And to be honest, I kind of want to do the loading thing. It's an interesting exercise, and feels more gamey. Again, this is just my experience with like the forest, where harvesting things does actually take time, and that time is simulated with button hold. Hmm. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm not sure. Let's see. The berry bush has a function called drop item. Now, this function, I believe, is called from the player, I guess. Also, the berry bush is detecting the player. So it looks like this was... well, this used to be handled from the player, from the berry bush, but there's certain issues with that. You could be next to two berry bushes, so you'd be interacting with both of them at the same time. So that is the reason why this is not here anymore. So we could say interactable, nearest interactable, closest interactable, dot drop bush, or drop item, is executed. It's too specific, like drop item is too specific to the bush. Oh, okay, I didn't even have to do anything. It just did it automatically. Okay, if input dot is action just pressed Which actions do we have access to? Interact. No, that's inventory. Use. Okay. What is the interact button? What is paired to the E key? Use. Okay. So if use has just been pressed, we're going to collect the berry. Can't interact with more than once, that makes sense. Okay. So it doesn't really make sense for the dot to appear because the dot suggests that we can interact with this object. So we can add an additional feature here. Check if this object can be interacted with. For example, berry bush being already collected. So here's how we can do it. With the berry bush, we have a variable called on/off. Now that seems a little weird. Collected is false. Okay. On/off is supposed to be determining whether or not the berry bush has any berries on it. So, fair enough. This is us setting up the textures here. So, on/off contains on. So I believe if I go to berry bush here, we have on and we have off. So on has the berries on, off has the berries off. Now, we don't have to have this variable here. Let's get rid of all this nonsense. Off, we have this update berry bush command here that updates the sprite of the bush. That's fine. Let's do this. Collected is going to be determining if it's on or off. So we're gonna do a string of on or off if collected is true, else it's going to be a string of on. So it's a ternary operator that will either choose between these two words, and this means that we can get rid of that extra variable. It is not required anymore, and just take the same exact thing and replace it here. So now we have a single variable called collected, and that single variable could simply determine what is going to be the name of the sprite. Okay, now this is done twice, so maybe instead of doing it twice, we can just call this function and do it once. Okay. Cool. Now, drop item is too specific too. Let's call interact. Okay. We're going to say that there's a function called interact and to know if a berry bush is interactable, we have collected set to false. Interactable is going to be false. And then we can kind of handle with in the process function, interactable is going to be equals to not collectible. So if collected is false, not false is true. So if collected is false, this is interactable. We can interact with it. Okay, now in the player, when we're actually interacting with the object that isn't mineable, some objects will have an interactable variable, some objects won't. So what we can do is check if we can do this. So interactable state equals, we talk to the interactable, what is it? Interactable process closest interactable, and then we attempt to get a variable called interactable. Now, if there's no such variable, I think it returns null. Get returns the current value of a specified key in the dictionary. That is not what I need. Another get, yeah, because I found it under dictionary. There's the regular get. Returns the variant value of a given property, which could also be a variable. If the property doesn't exist, returns null. Cool. Read the documentation, folks. Super useful. So we get the variable. This returns either null or interactable state. So if this is not equals to null and it's false, then return and don't do the rest of it. So there we go. So this will basically just skip running the rest of the code of the function, which makes none of this run, and we should be good. There we go. Can't interact with it anymore. So once the berries come back, that's when it's going to be interactable again, which we can test for that. We could put berry bush, put it like a timer. Let's do var regrow time 0. Yes. Well, actually, let's do 200. Regrow cooldown, and then var regrow time. I could have kept the original variable. So what we can do here, I guess the process function, we could check if os dot get ticks sec. I'm not sure I'm not getting any suggestions. Regrow minus regrow time. If this has exceeded the, let's say, 5-second mark, so this is in milliseconds because this works in milliseconds. If it has exceeded, then regrow time is going to be reset to this time, and interactable collected will be set to false because interactable gets its value from collected right here. And we also need to force it to update the value. We also need to make sure that this check is only performed if the berry has been collected. So if collected and the timer has run out, set collected back to false, and when we interact, that's when the timer gets updated. So I think every 5 seconds this thing will regrow now. Actually, no, it won't, because we have to also run the update function so that it updates the texture of the bush. Okay, 5 seconds. It doesn't wiggle either. It should be wiggling. There we go. Nice. Infinite berry glitch, let's go. Nice. Okay. Why are there no wiggles? There used to be wiggles. Pick wiggle amount. Pick wiggle. Oh, yeah. Because it has been disabled right there. And I think it was disabled for a reason. Oh, Jesus Christ. We may want to do something about that. Let's not multiply it by that. Okay. What's happening here? Maybe it has something to do with them fixing something in the code. Scale equals scale origin. That's the original scale. Yes. Plus vector 3 times 0.2. Let's try this. Okay. 0.1. Maybe the speed could be adjusted as well. Wobble time, let's do this. Times 5 times delta. Because the delta will equalize the speed between different computers. Okay, there we go. So now we can increase that speed, and this will be sure to have the same speed across different PCs. Okay, it's a little light. I think we can go a little bit faster. Yeah, all right. Let's make it wiggle also when the time the whole thing responds. I think that's a nice little effect. Okay, wobble amount. Nice. That's cool. Okay, well, the only thing it needs to do now is gives us the berries. Gives this us as the berries is. Stinky hobbitses. Okay. Let me get a few of these berry bushes in here. As you can see, berry bushes have to be static because the navigation has to go around them. Also, do they have to go this deep into the ground? I just kind of lift them up just a touch. Ready? Plays the same exact sound every time. Can we adjust the pitch? I would like to adjust the pitch. Hello? There's the play. Okay, so we are going to set the pitch scale to be rand range between, let's do 0.8 to 1.2. 1 being the original pitch scale. And that seems to be relatively the same. Although it could be that we just got the same pitch. Random choice. It's changing. Subtle. Yeah, it's definitely changing. We can go 0.7 and 1.3 technically. So one thing I'm going to have to make sure that I do is set up the timers to also save when you save the game. So when you load the game back up, the bushes just continue the timer from where they left off. That's going to be an important one. And I think for that, we might just be able to use an actual timer node instead of, setting up this whole OS get tick some sec thing. Because with the timer node, you can ask how much time is remaining and just make the timer continue from where it left off when you load the game. But then again, with a little bit of a magic, the magic of math, you can simply also do the same thing with the OS get tick some sec. Check during saving how long the timer had to wait. When you load, you set the time, this regrow time, to be equals to this time minus how much it had to wait, or plus how much it had to wait. Yeah, so it's not a big deal. I have been recording for 2 minutes straight for some reason with OBS. I don't know why. Okay, anywho. Right. I got a Godzilla in my stomach right now. It is angry. Well, it has been another hour. So we've been doing this for 2 and a bit hours. I think maybe it's a good idea to take a break, go do my exercises, and then come back and see what we can do going down this list. So we already started on harvesting, but this is not crop harvesting. This is just berry bush harvesting. Which growing crops means it has to involve accelerated growing, so that you could build things that allow you to grow crops faster, grow crops easier. Okay. I think that should be good. Okay, I'll take a break. We'll be back in a bit, maybe in an hour or two, and continue. Cool. Got all day. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.